Raider Nation, it's time. This is the Raiders Squad. Sponsored by Gametime. Everything Las Vegas Raiders every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Death Star in the desert. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Commitment to excellence starts here. The Raiders Squad Show starts now.
What's up, Raider Nation? And remember, if you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. But we do appreciate you joining us this morning on the Raider Squad Show. Now, whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us on the audio side, we do appreciate you, and you are continuing to help the show grow. And remember, you can also find us on the audio side, as I mentioned. If you got a couple of minutes, leave a rate and review. But Raider Nation, we do appreciate you. Lots to get into. For this episode, of course, we saw the Raiders' first preseason game ever. We're going to dive into that and the things that we like, the things that we didn't like. We're also going to be talking about a possible quarterback controversy, but it's not really the one that you think, because it's Gino's not on the line. We're talking about the backups here. And obviously there was a lot of talk after that first preseason game, and we got to talk about it. Also the O-line concerns, because I think that was one of the biggest concerns heading into the season. We saw a bit of the O-line during the preseason game. So we're going to get into that as well. Before we do all of that, though, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Raider Nation, lots to get into, guys, but I think we got to start off with the fact that the Raiders did make some moves. They ended up signing a piece of their secondary in Terrell Edmunds, who is, an 8-year vet. This is a guy that will bring some experience, but he's also dealt with a lot of injuries throughout his career. And so this is kind of like another shot for a guy like Terrell Edmonds, but for a secondary that is very young and they're still looking to add more pieces, get more depth. Just your thoughts on, what they've done to bring in a guy like Terrell Edmonds. And are you guys kind of surprised about them bringing in another piece to add to the secondary? Link, will go with you first.
Well, first of all, good morning, guys. I'm not surprised at all that they brought in another piece. I mean, this is what Pete Carroll has notoriously done throughout his career. More importantly, Edmonds provides a little bit of veteran leadership in that back end. Since the move that we found out in the first preseason game that Jamal Adams is no longer considered a safety, he's more considered a outside linebacker or a hybrid of that, then it becomes absolutely essential to have more safeties in the room or more help in that defensive secondary. So I'm not surprised. Edmonds is a former first-round talent and then has been around, but the injuries, that's my greatest concern. It's the amount of injuries, because, we just traded Jacorian Bennett away and he had his issues with injuries. And now you're thinking about bringing in someone else who has also had their issues with injuries. So I'm a little concerned about that, but a first-round talent, that experience being around the league, traveling around the league and having success. I think 74 starts throughout his career, which is very impressive for that young man. Giving him another chance. Why not throw him into the frame?
Right. That's exactly what it's all about. Pete Carroll doing what Pete Carroll does, right? Continuing to tinker with the roster. Is a guy that he worked out last week and then decided he wanted to bring him in. So he brought him in. And, the big question is, like Link said, the injury history. And there's a handful of guys that have the injury history that I'm concerned about. We talked about Jamal Adams, and I know we'll get into what he looked like on Thursday night. He's had an injury history. We talk about Eric Stokes. He looks good so far at the corner spot. He's had an injury history, right? There's guys that have injury history that you have to be concerned about. And if they pan out, then wow, you've got a really good player. If not, well, then you're, still trying to figure some things out. But again, Edmonds is a former first-round pick. The dude's very talented. The Raiders are going to continue to try to find the right fit that goes with what they're trying to do offensively and defensively. So anytime I see somebody brought in, added to the roster or worked out or what, it never surprises me, because again, go back to the history of what Pete Carroll did his first year in Seattle, where there was about 300 roster moves that happened. This is just the beginning of the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, and Terrell Edmonds, the thing about him is that he was a beast at Virginia Tech, and there was a lot of praise when he got drafted, but it was those injuries that kind of slowed him down. But at this point, this is kind of another shot for him to prove himself, because I believe he only started one game last year. So this is a group where he could possibly make some noise if he is healthy. And that's all I think the fans in Raider Nation wants to see. What do you think this kind of does for the secondary in terms of just adding depth? And do you guys feel like there still needs to be more depth added to the secondary? Because coming into the season, it was one of the positional groups that we were kind of worried about, Q.
Yeah, it was. And, the other thing is Thomas Harper saw him in practice with a walking boot on, right? So Thomas Harper was another guy that was, he was added depth in that safety room. And so now you have him go down and he's got a walking boot on, and there's a couple other guys walking around there with boots on. So, I mean, it's just kind of the nature of the beast. You're going to suffer some injuries. You hope that you don't suffer some massive injuries. We saw what happened earlier in the mock game with Lonnie Johnson Jr. when he went down with the broken fibula. So these kind of things happen. So I just think that you're adding another body there. You're hoping that he can go out there and provide that veteran leadership. He could play a little something. I mean, last year, remember, this guy was a practice squad guy last year. I mean, think about that. He was a former first-round pick that all of a sudden ended up on a practice squad and was there for, I think, one game, and then he got picked up, I believe, by the Steelers again and played a couple of games. So, yeah, I mean, he hasn't had the great run as that former first-round pick because of the injuries, but again, he's got the experience, he's got the know-how, and he comes from a place that Pittsburgh drafted him, so they have a history of having some really good defensive players. So again, if you get him healthy and ready to go, it's a nice addition to the team as far as I'm concerned.
Injuries affect every athlete differently. Mm-hmm. And when they happen over and over again, it can affect you mentally. And no one knows, you can't go into a player's mind as to what they're expecting or what they're trying to do. But more importantly, you could see the effort of the young man trying to get out there in Edmonds. But here's the thing: the Raiders have a unique opportunity because they do have cap space and because they have had other injuries, have openings. We won't know until the final 53-man roster is decided upon, but there's no harm in adding experience and depth to a position. More importantly, if anything else, you guard the people that you want to guard to get them through to the regular season. If you looked around the league this past weekend with all the preseason game, there were a number of notable injuries to players and teams, and a lot of guys I saw carted off. So it's a part of the game, and it will continue to be a part of the game. I'm glad that the season has started. I'm glad the preseason is here. You will see the Raiders juggle this roster over and over again before they finally decide on the final 53.
Yeah, they bring in a guy like Terrell Edmonds, and they release the wide receiver Seth Williams. So already some changes being made. And you guys have talked about a lot how, this is something that Pete Carroll does. He's going to bring in a lot of guys, and a lot of guys are going to be leaving as well. Now, before we kind of get into everything and do a deep dive, you guys were doing the pregame show. But before that game, you guys did a post-game show, and you guys also did this show. You guys have been doing a lot of content for Raider Nation. So shout out to you guys. But just in terms of that first game for you guys, because now you're getting into the mix too. I mean, Link, you're a former athlete, right? So you're used to game day, and you do this all the time. What was it like to get into the groove of you guys doing the, having a full day of the Raiders? Right. Q, you've already kind of been doing it with training camp, but what was that kind of like that first game? We'll go with you first.
It was a long day. Let me tell you. I mean, look, I did my local radio show on Raider Nation Radio as well. So I did 3 hours of a show and then leading right into the pregame show with Lincoln, which was fantastic. Then we sat there and watched the game together and then did the post game. So I think me and Link were together for almost about 10 hours on game day, which is fantastic. I'm good with that. If I got to spend some time with someone, I'd rather spend some time with Big Lincoln and pick his brain and listen to what he's got to say and, be able to watch the game with him. But it was just fun. And it's so funny because he kept telling me, Q, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Like, I'm excited and fired up because his football's back. I'm like, let's go. And he's like, slow down there, Grasshopper. Slow down. Like, you gotta walk before you can run. But the reality is we love football so much that it's great to see, game action. It's great to see guys fully dressed and going up against someone who's not themselves. And so it's really cool, man. And knowing that this is going to be preseason game week number 2, going up against the 49ers at Allegiant, that's going to be fun. And then look, preseason is going to be wrapped up, and we'll be talking about regular season games in week 1 going to New England. So looking forward to everything that we got cooking.
There's the term I described, and every athlete or anybody, any level feels when their particular season comes up. It's called the itch. You get the itch. You feel like you can do it. Oh, I feel like I want to go out there. For me, I feel like I want to go out there and hit somebody in the jaw. I want to take somebody out. You know what I mean? So you get that itch when the season starts, when you see it going full time, and even though it's preseason, you see football happening. That's what happens for me. So it was good to get back into the grind. It was good to get back into the groove. And like you said, we were working together all day. Felt like we were family. We were staying around each other so much. Yeah. But it was good. It was fun. And really, here's the thing, Chantel and Q. When we get into these things, and of course, we're going to break it down. We're going to analyze everything about the game, and obviously with the season that goes as it goes on. But when we get into these things, we're getting back into our groove. We're getting back into our rhythm. Chantel, your multiverse, and Q, your multiverse, and dealing with other sports. And I do it on a little bit of the smaller basis, but this is what we do. Yeah. And this is how we have fun in it. So we're glad that we have something to critique and something to talk about other than practice, because we're talking about practice and we talking about practice. Exactly. So, I'm happy for it. I'm happy that the season started. I'm glad to be with you guys as well.
10 hours with you guys in a room. There was a lot of football talk, I'm sure. And there was lots to talk about, guys, because I think that first game, some fans, Raider Nation, we got to pump our brakes because we were kind of hitting that panic button. And I don't think that we should be doing that yet because it's only one game. It's the preseason. And there's a lot of time to fix a lot of those things. So just your guys' thoughts on, some Raider fans hitting the panic button. Should we calm down? Should we relax? Because there's still a lot of time to make a lot of adjustments, right, Link?
Last week, remember we were talking about the O-line shuffle and how everybody was, there was fans that were out there crying, why is the JPJ starting? Pump your brakes. Dude, relax. Let the coaches coach. Let the players play. The games are going to come to it. And don't have knee-jerk reactions, which we're going to get into one of the major ones that you're going to talk about in a moment here. But just relax. This is – and it's like I told Q, don't jump out of the gates thinking that if you run a sprint, you're going to make it at home. You're going to make it to the finish line in the first. No, this is a long season. There are a lot of things that have to happen and have to juggle, and there are a lot of ways that the season could go. So, don't get overhyped with what you see when things are positive. Don't get down when things are negative. It's a marathon. Relax.
It is. And it's funny because I try to put myself into the fans' shoes, and when I hear them getting all upset and the sky is falling because, the first team didn't look very good, or the offense didn't look very good, or the first half of the game wasn't very good. And I just understand where they're coming from only because I know how long it's been since this team has been successful. And you guys know how long it's been since this team has been successful. And all that Raider Nation wants to see is this version of the Raiders get it right. This staff, led by Pete Carroll, led by John Spytek, everyone that's in place, this turnaround, start to turn around now. So they want to start to see some positivity. So when the game starts and it's, the Raiders 1s against the Seahawks 2s, and it just doesn't look very good, it's like, wait, hold on. Is this going to be the same thing again? But again, you have to put it in perspective. It's just preseason game number 1. They didn't look good in the first half, but they kept all the positivity going. And in the second half, they looked a lot better. And as Lincoln said in the pregame show, postgame show, whatever, the Raiders 2s and 3s or 3s and 4s were better than the Seahawks 3s and 4s, right? And so, you just got to take it with a grain of salt. But I understand where a fan is thinking, okay, this is going to be the one that's going to get it right. And then they don't see it immediately and it's thinking, oh, man, here we go again. And so I think that's where the panic starts to set in. But you got time. The Raiders have time to put it all together. And I think this week they start to really, put the pieces together and start to close that gap a little bit.
Yeah. And let's keep it real. The Raiders have the best fans, right? The most loyal fans. And we ride for the Raiders really hard. So I kind of get that too. And I think Raider Nation doesn't want to settle for mediocrity because it's been a pretty long time it's been a long time where Raider Nation's had to do that. And so I can understand the frustration, but that's why I kind of want to go with the positive route first before we get into the negatives, right? Let's start with the good news first. What did you guys like in that first game, Link? What impressed you in that first game?
You were assuming there's good news?
There should be a little bit. There should be a little bit. Yeah, there should be more positive.
You saw positive, right? Chantel? Hugh, you saw positive?
I saw a little positive.
I'm messing with you guys. I'm kidding. I'm joking. Here's the thing. I enjoy seeing young guys go out and give their all when they given the opportunity. Mm-hmm. There are so many times, there are so many guys, their names will be overshadowed for whatever reason. Didn't come out with a high draft choice, didn't even get drafted. Those types of things. Played at a smaller college, whatever reason. They are not necessarily household names. So I enjoy seeing a young man going out there and giving his opportunity and making the best of it. That's what I get out of preseason. I don't take anything else. Everything's with a grain of salt. Look, you try to see scheme. You try to understand ideology and philosophy of what these coaches are trying to implement. And then you want to see the players, take them on their shoulders and go out there and do it. But again, you're going up against another human being. And I've always said those guys on the other side of the ball get paid too. So don't take anything for granted. You don't know where you stand. This is just a grade for you. This is a stepping stone for you in one-time performance. So the positive that I got out of the game is seeing the young man's taking full advantage, those young guys taking a full advantage of the opportunity before them.
What I loved was in the second half of the game when they're making a comeback and they're showing that they have an opportunity, and we know that wins and losses don't matter in the preseason, but seeing all the guys from Jamal Adams to Max Crosby to Geno Smith to all the big name players fully invested in the game, not having the side conversations, on the sideline waiting for the game to get wrapped up, but fully invested, cheering on their guys that were out there. I thought that meant something. It showed that this team is together. And that's something that I see every day in practice. I see how these guys are out there competing together, and they're tired of competing against each other. Trust and believe that. They're ready to just continue to compete against players that are coming from another team. But, just seeing these guys running up and down the sideline, cheering for each other, and Geno Smith, trying to coach up Cam Miller, like literally walking onto the field to try to coach him up and say, hey, this is what you're going to see in this situation. That shows leadership from that young man as well. So I just think that that there was a lot of positive to take away from as far as a team being together and being bought in. And that's something that even going back to mandatory minicamp when Lincoln was out there, he said, that's the first thing I went to look for. Is this team bought in together? And those kind of things, that small things that happen in preseason game number 1, second half of the game, going down to the end, that tells me that they're all bought in together.
Yeah, and I actually liked how Pete Carroll kind of had Geno Smith's back, because some Seahawks fans, had that sign, who was the bigger bust, Geno, or I think it was Jamarcus Russell or something like that. And that was disrespectful, but yeah.
That fan is also very famous for doing that, being that heckler, and even John Feliciano, who used to play with the Raiders back in the day, he tweeted out that, oh, that's that same guy that's always trying to get players in some trouble. So he's not quite as bad as the guy that was in Washington for many, many years, but this is a dude that he's been famous for trying to get under players' skin. And look, there may be a result with that fan and Geno and Max, giving them the double bird salute to him. There may end up being a fine coming down from the NFL for that. But Pete Carroll, to your point, he had his back when he was asked about it yesterday after practice. And did you see the sign? All right, next question. Like he didn't have no problem with it. He actually tried to jump up and grab the sign. I thought that was cool. He tried to jump up and go grab it and wasn't able to. But that out of a really good reception for Pete Carroll from the Seattle fans and a really good reception for Geno Smith outside of that dude, I thought that that was cool that Pete Carroll went to back for his quarterback like that.
Yeah, and I think that's what the players kind of want to see too, right? Does the coach have your back? Because sometimes in some sports, we've seen some coaches throw their players underneath the bus. I'm not going to say no names, but it happens quite often. So I kind of like that he showed that. But we're going to get into what we didn't like, the things that the Raiders got to work on. And then later on in the show, we're going to get into the O-line, and we're also going to get into Cam Miller's performance and Aidan O'Connell's performance. So keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're watching or listening to the Raider Squad Show. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of year. NFL kickoff is almost here. And that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, I'm going to be playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. Now, the best part about Yahoo Fantasy is probably the interface that they have, right? It's really easy to do mock drafts. It's really easy to add players, pick up players off the waiver wire. And that's what makes the experience a lot better, is the fact that the interface is so easy to use. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, and now it's time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Welcome back, Raider Nation. You're watching or listening to the Raiders Squad Show. Remember, if you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. Coming up later in the show, we're going to get into the O-line, also Cam Miller's performance, Aidan O'Connell's performance, and we might touch on it a little bit here. But guys, I think one of the big questions, obviously, is the fact of, what kind of concerned you about that first preseason game? What was the first thing that you kind of noticed that had you a little bit worried, Q?
I wouldn't say it's worried, but I just noted that it's a lot of cleanup work that they have to do. It was pretty sloppy. especially early on between penalties, missed tackles, and poor angles, right? I think that was the best way to kind of describe it, right? Penalties, missed tackles, and poor angles. There's just things that you could see that these guys haven't played actual football in a while or ever in the National Football League, because you have rookies out there as well. So you can see that. That to me was the biggest concern. They did a lot of tackling drills on Sunday at practice where they were using the tackling sled. And, to me, and Lincoln will know better than I do, but, Robbie Leonard and Patrick Graham are showing proper wrap-up techniques, and they were going up and down the field on the sled. Now, that's still not another player. That's not a ball carrier that's trying to escape you. But, to me, I guess the concern would be the fact that they had to stop multiple times, have guys do it over and show them the proper technique to wrap up, because that should be something to me that just comes back to you. That's, those are the fundamentals. It's like in basketball, having a left hand. Like, I don't want to all of a sudden become a good player once I develop my left hand. Like, if I'm in the league, I already have a left, right? And so that to me, I want to see them really work on that this week, right? Tackling drills, and they'll have the joint practice with the 49ers, and then we'll see what it looks like on Saturday at the preseason game. I'd like to see them clean up those things. So those to me are biggest concerns, only because they're fundamental stuff, right? It's not really scheme stuff. It's keeping contained. It's not lining up off sides, having your wide receiver line up off sides. Like, there's certain things that you do. You're in high school football. What do? You check with the official when you line up as the wide receiver. Am I good? You're good. Cool. You get the thumbs up. If not, they'll tell you, right? And so those are the kind of things, like just the mental awareness of what you're doing that I really want to see them develop and work on this year. I think that they'll be fine. The scheme was very vanilla. You're not going to see anything in a preseason game, but those kind of things, the fundamental stuff, is what stands out to me.
Yeah, and to piggyback what Q's comment, and I agree with everything that he said. Yeah, these are coachable moments, in my opinion. These are coachable opportunities. And what I mean by that is that there are certain things that you can work on guys with. Now, of course, alignment, assignment, technique, and all that other stuff comes into play. And understand this, as the more you become a veteran in playing this game, when preseason comes, the refs are going to be very, very hard in throwing flags, because they're being critiqued on their performance too. Did you see it? You can see an infraction. And the way it goes with football, you can call an infraction every single play. There's something that's egregious that's worthy of calling. Whether you do it or not, that's up to your discretion. But more importantly, having these guys understand that you have to do everything right, and everything's going to be needle picked. Everything's going to be looked at through a microscope. Everything that you do, technique, sound has to be sound. So coachable moments. It was very sloppy, but it's also preseason, the first preseason game. That's exactly what I expect. Now, where we go from here is, as we progress to the preseason and get to the regular season, I'm hoping to see for improvement. Cut down on the penalties, better angles at tackles, and better tackling and stuff like that. More conscientious of the surroundings. If you're a quarterback, when there's a blitz call or they're loaded up the box, don't run into a loaded box. Do something different. But because it is vanilla, you can't necessarily make all those adjustments. So those are other little things, but it's a lot of coachable moments that I saw on film this weekend.
And I think it's one of those things where it's like, it's preseason. They're not going to unload the entire clip and show you everything in their playbook. Oh. And at the same time, when it comes to tackling and stuff, like, these guys haven't tackled for a minute, right? And even in practice right now, they're not really tackling like how they would in game. So when they're in a game, you're kind of seeing guys not really make the tackles that they should, unless you're like a guy like Jamal Adams that's going hard, right? And he's someone that's going to be playing linebacker. I want to talk to you guys about the defense, though, because they were playing against the Seattle backups, right? Like, they weren't playing against the Seattle ones. Yeah, that's true too. And so that kind of concerned me, but at the same time, I'm reminding myself that it's just that first preseason game. What were your guys' thoughts about the defense, playing against, the Seattle backups and not really looking too great? Q?
I mean, look, I wouldn't have had any problem with the way that they performed if they didn't have the struggles that we just talked about, right? The missed tackles, the poor angles, no pressure on the quarterback. That's really what did them in, right? And then Isaiah Polamalu comes up with a really good interception on that first drive, but even he had missed on a tackle, kind of did a Olay. Guys that are young and they miss some tackles or take a poor angle, like I said, I can kind of get that because they're young and they're still probably a lot of them are out there thinking. But when you have a guy that's a wily veteran like a Devin White out there and completely missing or tackling, trying to tackle really high, like, he knows better than that. He's been there, done that. He's a Super Bowl champ for a reason. So those are the kind of moments that I look at and say, okay, you've got to play better. You saw what Jamal Adams did. I mean, he was knifing through the defense and he was making tackles. He's always been a short tackler. That's never been his problem. Now, going and working in coverage has never been his forte, but they know what they're asking him to do, a certain thing that he does really well, and he's taking full advantage of it. And he looked very sure about himself. A lot of these other guys looked like that they were kind of hesitating and slow and thinking. And, Max only played for one drive, so one whatever. So not getting some pressure on the quarterback makes sense. But someone else is going to have to step up, right? If it's not going to be Max, who else is going to get some pressure on the quarterback? So that's all, a work in progress as well. Again, it's just, for me, the defense not looking good early on. What bothered me was just the fundamental stuff, not really the fact that, Seattle was able to execute.
Yeah, and look, here's the thing. Raider Nation has to relax because we're going to see a progression. We're going to see a lot of young guys that you probably wouldn't necessarily see during the regular season, and that's okay. Give them a chance to play. Give them a chance to show their stuff. But I think what in recent history, Raider Nation has become somewhat spoiled because you're used to seeing people playing around the quarterback, whether it's Max Crosby or anybody else, Malcolm Coons, whomever. You're used to seeing guys get around the quarterback. This game, they didn't generate much pressure. And I knew Patrick Graham wasn't going to dial up a lot of his exotic blitzes, even though he did call some to sort of just throw it out there and give a team something to prepare for. It wasn't overall an aggressive style defense. What most concerned me, and the thing that I want guys to focus on, is just the integrity of the defense. Q talked about it, missed tackles, but poor angles. Yeah. Understand that you don't want two guys running through the same gap. If one guy takes the B gap, another guy has to take the C gap. Because if you leave the C gap uncovered, they're going to bounce outside. Those types of things, those types of issues, the integrity of the defense, understanding where your responsibility is and where you have to go. And with the recent changes, like with Jamal Adams, moved from safety to will linebacker, as Q said, and I agree with him. Yeah, he's good against the run. He's a liability against the pass. Teams are going to pick up on that until he's able to get better. You put him in a position. There were so many eyes in the backfield when from the Raiders' defensive standpoint, that they weren't paying attention to the keys around them. You can't let somebody get behind you. You can't let guys run past you. You got to don't take for granted that you're covering an area, but you have a guy behind you, whether you're playing cover two defense, if you're dropping back into that zone like you're supposed to. So just integrity overall of the defense, philosophy of the defense, and more importantly, execution when it's out there. A lot of coachable moments.
Yeah, and Link, you've been in the situation where you've had to play a preseason game. Mm-hmm. What's the vibe like? Like, are you going hard as a player in that first preseason game, or are you noticing as a player too that guys are missing tackles and these are angles that they shouldn't be tackling in? Like, are you noticing that as a player when you're in it?
Well, yeah, no, guys don't want to mess up. Nobody wants to mess up, and nobody's perfect. I'm not asking you to play a perfect game. I'm asking you to do your job. This is where I think at the time that most people want to talk about coaching. Well, coaching is somewhat overrated because if it's not built in you athletically on this level, it's not going to come. So that's where my standard is. As for me personally, I try to take every opportunity out there and go on the football field, no matter whom I was facing, to get better. But a lot of times people allow it to get into their mind, creep into their mind. Well, it's ones versus twos or it's ones versus three. Mm-hmm. So I should be able to dominate him. You don't know that guy. Right. I don't care if he is listed as a 3. You just don't know him. So you can't never underestimate your opponent is a way to look at it. And when guys take it upon themselves to go out there and give it their all, no matter who they're playing with, no matter how long they're playing, they'll be better professionals. But that's a maturity that's learned. It's not instilled. It's a maturity that's learned.
Yeah, and those
twos and threes. Yeah. Those 2s and 3s, by the way, they're out there knowing that they're getting an opportunity. Hey, I'm getting a chance to start. Right now, I get to put some really good film out there. I'm trying to make this team. I'm also trying to make one of 31 other teams in the league. So, yeah, I'm going to go out there and get my best foot forward. So, regardless, whenever you get the opportunity to play, you always want to make sure that you go out there and you put your best film out there. I mean, I say it all the time when it comes to, radio and stuff. Whenever I'm going to do a show, I'm going to do my best show. I don't know who's listening. Right. I mean, there could be someone that's could change my life. Well, that's the same thing with these guys when they're out there playing the game. They've got to put their best film work out there because someone could change their life. They might not make that team, but they might make another team.
Yeah, and that's a positive way to look at it because when I'm on radio, I'm like, no one's going to listen to this. So if I mess up, it's all good. That's the wrong way to look at it. You make a good point there.
Bad take, Chantel. Bad take.
No, that's when you get out of college. That might be the mindset. But they are going to be taking on the 49ers on Saturday. And I was hearing during practice this weekend that they were working on the small things, that they're trying to adjust on the tackling and everything like that. Q, I believe you were there this weekend. What was the vibe like after that preseason game?
Well, Saturday was kind of, I don't want to say relaxed day, but it was indoors. And so it wasn't quite as intense. And then it was supposed to be, well, Sunday is going to be a very hard practice. They're really going to go hard in the paint. They're going to be outside. They're going to be fully padded up. They're going to be ready to go. And there was that, but there was still some sloppiness. And Pete Carroll acknowledged it afterwards and said, look, repetition is going to get us where we need to be. Film work and work on the grass is going to get us where we need to be. I'll tell you this, though, on Saturday, one thing that really stood out to me was Trey Tucker. We've been talking about, what kind of a role he's going to be or what kind of wide receiver can he potentially be now that he's going into year 3. It seemed like it was a Trey Tucker show, almost like the showcase of Trey Tucker on Saturday. They really got him heavily involved in the offense, and everything that I'm hearing, Chip Kelly really likes what he could bring to the table, as well as Michael Mayer, what he could bring to the table. So those are 2 little notes to go ahead and put in your back pocket and hold on to them for later on. But yeah, it was like the vibe on Saturday was kind of like, I don't want to say it was like recovery and it didn't go as hard in the paint, but then Sunday they had a bunch of fans out there as well. We're able to see this team, start to try to refine and sharpen up their tools and get everything going. And then a big controversy came in that practice as well when we saw that JPJ wasn't participating. And then we heard from Pete Carroll after the practice that he got his ribs banged up, or in his words, punched, and he wasn't able to get through practice.
Yeah, so
injuries are part of it, Chantel. I mean, and of course, when we talk about preparation as they prepare to go against joint practices against the 49ers, it's another opportunity to sort of do what you want to do without a bunch of eyes on you, because the 49ers are filming everything. Who knows what they distribute their film to in practice. So you don't want to give anything away. You still want to be very vanilla, but you want to try to bring out the competitive edge in these upcoming joint practices against the 49ers before they have the preseason game this weekend.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're going to hear about a scuffle at this joint
Absolutely.
practice, because we always do, right? We always hear those things. But Q, you mentioned something really important that we're going to get into the next segment, because JPJ didn't partake in that practice. Obviously, lots of questions about the O-line. We're going to get Link's take on what we saw there in that first preseason game as well. A deep dive on the O-line with him and Q. That's next, Raider Nation. So keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're watching or listening to the Raider Squad Show. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories and not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Another cool thing about Gametime is you can see exactly where your seat is going to be. So Raider Nation, if you're going to a Raiders game, you can see exactly where you're going to be sitting, because they have that seat view that's 360, which makes it amazing to see where your experience will be if you're going to head to a game or even a concert. So take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back, Raider Nation. Remember, if you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. Later on in the show, we're going to talk about Cam Miller's performance and Aidan O'Connell's performance in that first preseason game. But guys, I think we got to definitely touch on the fact that JPJ, as you heard Q say earlier, that he wasn't partaking in that last practice, that there could potentially be a rib injury. No, I don't want to call it an injury, but he wasn't partaking. And then there's also all the questions about, where's JPJ going to be on this O-line? And we did get to see a little bit of the O-line in that first preseason game. I think there was lots of concerns because Genty went for, -1 yards. It didn't look good. The holes weren't there. And the thing that Link always talks about is continuity, right? You need to have that continuity on that O-line. Link, what were your thoughts on what we saw in that first preseason game?
Still yet to be determined. That's how the best way to put it. Yet to be determined. We haven't seen a solid starting 5. The Raiders interchanged their offensive line, which I expected them to do, especially in the first preseason game. We saw Dylan Parham and Colton Miller come out for the first series, along with Geno Smith, and then they were done. I mean, look, I'm a person who's going to sit there and say, let the coaches coach, let the players play. Whoever you put out there needs to do their best. But we did get a chance to see some guys were uncomfortable in a noisy situation. which is the experience that you want. You much rather have it in a preseason game than in a regular season game when it counts. So, guys were on the offensive line who said they were unfamiliar with a silent count, had never done a silent count before. Now you get practice. There are loud stadiums around the league, and sometimes as a tackle, I know for sure, it is almost impossible to hear. You're only 2 people away, but you cannot hear somebody yelling and screaming right in your ear because it's that loud. So you have to get used to those situations. Threw a bunch of young guys into the fire and see how they reacted. The Raiders were very fortunate enough to come out with a tie. Wasn't a loss, wasn't a win, was a tie, but they were fortunate enough to come out. But you do have lessons to be learned, and this Raiders offensive line is still a work in progress to be determined.
Yeah, it's definitely still a work in progress. I actually asked Pete Carroll about that on Sunday after practice. Is there any kind of sense of urgency, any kind of timeline that they have where they'd like to be able to identify their starting 5? And he said, no. He said, we got all the time. We've got all the time until the regular season starts. And if it doesn't, come out and show itself on its own, and that's what he's expecting, that it'll be obvious when the starting 5 is there, that they'll feel comfortable with them. If it doesn't, show itself by the start of the regular season, then they'll work into the regular season. And that, to me, that made my that made my smile go away, because I don't want to see them have to have that kind of a situation, right? I don't want them to go into the regular season still not have identified who their starting 5 is going to be. I do believe JPJ is going to be the right guard once it's all said and done, as long as he's healthy and ready to go. But it's competition. He wasn't healthy and ready to go on Sunday, and so there's something to definitely monitor there. And Antonio Mafi starts at the right guard spot. And look, Antonio Mafi is the guy that they just picked up not too long ago. He's a guy that's a Chip Kelly guy. He worked with Chip Kelly there at UCLA, so something to definitely pay attention to, just to see how this offensive line continues to develop. They're off today, and so they'll be back at practice tomorrow. Trust and believe everyone out there, including myself, will have all eyes on the offensive line.
We talked about having the best 5 guys, and there was some concern that JPJ wasn't going to be the starting center, because coming into the season, everyone thought that position was kind of solidified for him. Pete came in, made some changes, which is okay because you want the 5 best guys to start. But my question is, if Pete figures it out, maybe not the first week, maybe not the second week, the third week, isn't that kind of worrisome? Because don't you want this group to be together and be building that chemistry? Because it's like the one room in football where it's like they have to have this chemistry. It's not like the wide receivers or anything like that, right? Right, Link?
Yeah, correct. Look, every wide receiver is going to run a post route differently. So, you have to take that as a quarterback into consideration. But the fact is that you want to have the continuity on that offensive line. I've always said the guys that play better longer as long as they stay together. And Q and I have been doing this for a number of years. And Chantel, you're a big Raider Nation fan. You followed it. When you don't have that, you have that inconsistency at offensive line. When you're mix and matching guys, trying to figure out and see what sticks and what works, you're not going anywhere. Right. As a matter of fact, you're causing more harm than good trying to figure those things out. So that's why it's essential. That's why I've always said preseason is essential. Get these sort of kinks, get these things out of the way. And do your evaluating as best as you can with a fine-tooth comb. You go over, you figure out who are the best 5 that we can put on the field to give us the best opportunity to play, and you go with that. If injuries happen, of course, you have to make adjustments, but you go with that, you stick with that. More importantly, you get these guys used to seeing one another, being around one another, and fighting for one another.
And what are your guys' thoughts about Meredith, right? Because there's some people love him at that center position. And then some people, I just read on Twitter, like Raider Nation thinks that he can't play the right guard position. So that's why they got JPJ in there, because they're more confident with having Meredith at the center position. And then Alex Kappa wasn't in the game, right? Like we haven't seen him yet. So the 5, it hasn't been solidified. Q, just your thoughts on those guys.
Well, Kappa's been banged up, so he's not going to be able to go if he's injured. I think Meredith is more the body type that they want at the center spot. They want the bigger maulers at the guard spots. That's why you got Parham there at 332. You've got JPJ and his size there at the right guard spot. So ideally, that's what they really want. And Pete Carroll said that for the majority of time, Meredith has been a guard and JPJ has been a center. So you might think, hey man, we're crazy. What are they doing? They're switching things up, but they feel like they see something there. That's what Pete Carroll said. We feel like we see something where Meredith could be the center and JPJ could be the guard. They just have to go out there and solidify it. They've got to go out there and prove it. And if it doesn't work, if they don't feel like it's going in the direction that they want it to go, they'll switch it. They're not married to it. They're not one of those where they have to just stick with this because, well, that's what they planned on doing. They're just trying to, as Lincoln said, get the best 5 guys out there. I'm just hoping that they can identify their best 5 sooner rather than later, so they don't have week 2, week 3. They're still tinkering with the offensive line, because we've seen that. We've been there, done that. We've seen what that looks like, and it doesn't look good.
I've watched the game a couple times now, and I saw Jordan Meredith, I thought, did a solid job with making his calls. Most people need to remember the center is the general of the offensive line.
Yep.
He's coming up and he's determining protection unless it's overridden by the quarterback say. But he's telling you, the guys, who's the most dangerous 5 that we have to worry about. And I thought Jordan Meredith did a solid job. Seattle did bring some exotic blitzes, and I thought just overall the ideal to pick them up was there. The athleticism wasn't. There were times where guys were just getting through and there were holes in the protection. So that's the area to be concerned. But again, those are coachable moments. I want to see Jordan Meredith, and I saw it so much as far as I can see, doing a solid job of getting the guys to going to where they're supposed to. Now we got to work on execution, and that's the athletic side of it. So I thought Jordan Meredith did a solid job. I'm still, look, I don't know what's going on between JPJ, but he is a bigger body that gives you a bigger presence at guard, which is essential versus some of the defensive tackles that we've seen in this league and that the Raiders are going to play against. So I do think that gives you versatility, but more importantly, it gives you an ability to adjust. What happens if JPJ goes down to center? I got to have another center. And you know, what happens if JPJ goes down to guard? I got to have another guard in. Without knowing the future of Alex Kaplan, where he's going to play in him, you've got to have other guys step up. So this is what you want to, this is what you have, why depth is absolutely necessary. But most importantly, guys, this is where you got to see guys play. I got to see you play, kids. Yep. You can't determine that in practice. I got to see you play. So you throw everything out there and see what sticks.
You know, and I did solve the problem of, or not the problem, but the mystery of Dylan Parham and the big weight gain over the offseason. That actually wasn't a big weight gain over the offseason at all. I asked him about it on Sunday after practice. Was that something? Was that a point of emphasis going from what you were listed at 285 to 332? And he said, to be honest, I don't know why it still said 285. He said, I've been 332 the whole time I've been in the league. He's like, I don't know why it says that. And that's why when I was looking at him, I kept saying he doesn't look any different than he's always looked. But obviously I'm not 332 pounds, so I don't know what it looks like anyway. Like, I don't know what 332, like, I've never tried to carry 332 on this little frame. Like, that ain't going to work. So I wouldn't know. But it was bothering me the whole time because, you know, we're looking at the roster. I was like, wait, he was on the roster last year at 285, 332. That's almost 50 something pounds. Like, what are we doing?
First of all, Q, I just want to add to that. He has never been 285 since he's come into the league. I have never. And when I looked at the roster, I said, oh, this has to be a misprint. I remember telling Mike Taylor back when we first got him, I was like, 285. That's not 285. That's a biscuit away from 350. What are you talking about?
I was so happy to hear that. I was like, okay, I'm not crazy. I knew he didn't look any different or any bigger, and he wasn't. He's just, that was a misprint for, I don't know, the last 4 years. That's amazing.
That's great. It's funny, Q, because when you mentioned that on the last episode, I went and I started looking at pictures of Dylan Parham, and I was like, wait, it doesn't look like he gained any weight. Right. Like, where's his weight coming from? So exactly. That's really interesting. It's got to be from like the draft process. It's
right. Well, usually they take the combine weights. They take your combine weights, and I didn't research them that deep. But if that was his combine weight, that's usually what they use, and then they set the standard from there going on, unless there's some dramatic change. But when Q first brought it up and it drew my attention to, it was like 285. No, never. No.
I can sleep good now. Mystery has been solved.
Yeah, one biscuit away though, just like Link said, right? I'll say this though, guys. The one thing that Pete Carroll has been known to do is in Seattle, like even when there was that, you know, Super Bowl team with the Seahawks, like they didn't really have a really good O-line, and then for some strange reason, midway through the season, they were able to figure it out. Like the Seahawks never really had a decent O-line with Pete Carroll there, but midway through the season, you know, week 8 or 9, they would kind of figure it out, and we'd be like, well, how did they figure out that O-line? So there's some positivity going into there. I do want to mention one guy that was serving up pancakes was Lackey Tassie. Right? Yeah. Like he looked really, really good. Your guys' thoughts on his performance, because I thought he was one of the bright spots on that preseason game.
I think he looked good for not knowing what he was doing. Right. I mean, he was still, you know what I mean? Like, and I do think that that's a positive, because you could see him hesitate a little bit. Right. And just kind of, okay, where am I going? Where am I going? But he was really good. And Pete Carroll gave him a lot of props and was really proud of him for the performance that he did. If he could figure it out and actually, know what he's doing and going out there and getting these pancakes with a purpose, like going out there and knowing exactly where to dominate and how to dominate, when to dominate, this dude could end up being a hell of a find. It's just, and again, I think that just kind of going out there raw and just playing and just doing whatever you feel like that you're supposed to be doing, I think that was a really good first step for him. So, yeah, that's definitely someone to pay attention to and monitor because, again, he does not play against the 53-man roster. He does not play against the 90-man roster. He's part of the NFL International the Gateway program. So he's basically a roster-exempt player. So they can really benefit by helping him develop. And if he could turn into something, they can have themselves a steal.
You remember what I said last week? Is like do everything 100% and go fast. You're going to make a mistake. You don't know what you're doing. Hey, look, you see somebody, you don't know if you need to hit them. Just do it. Make the mistake 100%. Go fast and give it your all. And that's what we're seeing. And again, that's something that I commend these young guys because look, they don't have all the answers. They're not supposed to have all the answers, but all they're supposed to do is show the case they can be the best athlete and that you deserve to compete on this level. And you take full advantage of it. And I think that's what we saw.
Do you guys feel like anyone's on the hot seat on this O-line? Like, is it JPJ? And I only ask that just because I feel like coming into the year, there was a lot of confidence in him. Then he's getting moved on the line, and there's questions, right? Is he healthy or not? Is he kind of on the hot seat, Q?
I don't think he's on the hot seat. I'm really interested to know where he is dealing with this, the switch around, the move. Because, look, he's the one who proclaimed to be the center. And now all of a sudden they got him at the right guard spot. So how is he dealing with that mentally? Is that something that is wearing on him? Is he comfortable playing that right guard spot? JPJ is a football player, right? So that's the one thing I know is that he just wants to be out there on the field and he wants to help, his team win any way possible. So I know that he's got it in him, but, that could be a sense of adversity that he's not, maybe he's not doing really well with. And, not seeing him out there on Sunday, again, dealing with the rib issue that Pete Carroll mentioned, it's something to continue to monitor. So I don't necessarily think he's on the hot seat. I just want to see how he's going to deal with the adversities. I mean, he's only a second-year guy, so he's still learning the NFL. It's not like he's been around for 8-9 years. I mean, this guy's still trying to figure it out as well.
I won't say the hot seat. I think that's a term that leaves people to suspect other things than what's happening in front of us. I will say this, as Q mentioned, he's a second-year guy. Touted high draft choice that dropped a little bit due to injury issues. So my biggest concern about his durability. Last year he was dealing with the concussions before he started the season. I will not question his tenacity, his ferociousness, his smarts. I would not question it. Undoubtedly, he's an athlete that deserves to be out on the football field. But because we are talking about a performance-based standard, will he perform the level that we need him to perform to be successful? Consistently. I don't want to have a guy who only plays 5 plays here or 5 plays there or 1 game here or 2 games here and then he's on the shelf. That does me no good because that doesn't work in the continuity that we just spoke of for all offensive line. So when you talk about JPJ, he's not on the hot seat, but this is what I consider a prove it moment. Show me that you deserve to be out there. Okay. Show me that you deserve to not to be overlooked. I don't question a guy. If a running back came up to me and I wasn't starting, I'm your starting tackle. I'm one of your tackles. I have that confidence in me because I know I'm going to be out there in the football field. Right. So I don't have a problem with him telling, Jensen Ashton Genty that he was going to be out his starting center. I'm your center. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with him bringing other guys together, creating that leadership because I believe leaders are made. They're not born. I don't have a problem with that. But I do need him to be on the football field. And whatever is going on with him that only the coaches and him are privileged to, and we can only see from the outside looking in, let it be. Let's see how it settles, but not on the hot seat. I think he's got a lot to prove and a long way to go.
Yeah, and like you said, I think a couple of episodes ago that it doesn't really matter where you are on the line. You just want to be on the line.
Absolutely.
Like that you'll because you were talking about how your position was changed too, right? Yeah. So it's something that you kind of go through as a football player. I also wanted to ask you guys about Mafi because he's a guy that's Chip Kelly's guy, if I'm not mistaken. They brought him in. And what were your thoughts on his performance? And also, do you guys feel like if there is a possibility that they should add more depth to the O-line if they can bring in more guys? Because injuries happen throughout the season. And is that a focus that the Raiders should have?
I mean, I look at the offensive line. They always need depth on the offensive line. I think that's something that is, it's just one of those inevitables, right? It feels like that those guys in those trenches are going to get banged up, at some point. And so, when you're trying to establish who your starting five is going to be, you're trying to establish who your, next run is going to be, and you're also trying to build this culture where that the run game is going to be so important. You need those big fellas up front to make sure that they're handling their business. So I never have a problem with extra depth along that offensive line. And, like you said, Mafi is a guy that's Chip Kelly's guy. He, to me, looks a lot smaller than JPJ does, when he's at that right guard spot. But maybe that's kind of what they're looking at as well. I mean, there's so many different things that they're tinkering with and looking at, and this is when you do that, right? It's a great time to do that. Get that look in right now, just to see what works and what doesn't work, and what fits better and what doesn't fit better, right? So now is the time to work that out, and that's what they're doing. They're in the lab trying to get these things figured out, and then it plays out on the grass. So I'm very intrigued to see how many of the offensive linemen are kept when they finally cut down the roster to 53 men, because again, I do think that depth is going to be needed on this team.
Depth is absolutely essential in every position, in every group, that whether it's defensive backs, offensive line, defensive line, depth is essential. And the thing is, and it's sort of changed then back in a couple decades when I played. Once upon a time, we used to go in every game with 7 offensive linemen. You would have your primary 5, and you have 2 that could swing to each position. And you were hoping that was something that you could do on your roster moves for game day, because it allowed you to play more emphasis in other areas. That has somewhat changed. That's not always the same. In my research over the last decade, there have been very few teams that have been able to have the privilege of having their offensive line from day one start together, play together, and stay together.
Right.
Very few. Because of injuries and other mishaps, whatever it is, that's the way it plays out. But I will say this, that's a luxury that every team would want, because you would like to know that you can rely on those 5 guys so you can get the job done. And I don't think we're there yet. And I don't think, even as far as your question, Chantel, should the Raiders add more depth? Yes, they have the ability to do, and I think they will play around with it. But again, they also have to see what they have in the cupboard first. You have to see what you have on the shelf first before you go out there and explore and go shopping and like, okay, I need another guard, or I might need another tackle. You got to see what you have. So that's why preseason is invaluable.
Yeah. So Raider Nation, don't panic just yet. Also, on the other side of this, we're going to get into the quarterback controversy that we thought we might never have. We'll get into that next, Raider Nation. Keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. Welcome back, Raider Nation. So there was one glaring thing that happened during this week 1 preseason game. And to me, it was the quarterback controversy. I'm not talking about Geno Smith and Aidan O'Connell. I'm talking about the fact that Aidan O'Connell didn't have the best game. And then quarterback Cam Miller came in there and he looked very good. Obviously still made some mistakes, but he looked really good. And then I started talking on, Twitter, talking about, is there a quarterback controversy? Should Cam Miller
started
be
this?
QB2?
You started this?
I had to ask, should Cam Miller be QB2 after what we saw? Link, your thoughts on his performance, and if there is a backup quarterback controversy.
The short answer to your question, your second question, no. The long answer to your second question, no. There is not a quarterback controversy. Don't start that, Chantel. Don't put that out there. Look, Aidan O'Connell is, as Dennis Green would say, may he rest in heaven. They are who we thought they are. He is who I think he is. There's a difference when you watch Aidan O'Connell in the first half, the struggles that he had before, and then you saw him in the second half settle down a little bit, had a little bit of a better outing. There is a progression to be made. I'm still confident that Aidan O'Connell can be quarterback in this league, but there's a particular system that you have to create for him. More times than not, when you saw the offensive line struggle, we got to keep in mind, a quarterback's no good if he's on his back or he's running for his life. And Aidan O'Connell is not the most mobile quarterback out there. So he's really a statue in the pocket, and those defensive linemen know that. So they're teeing their ears back and they're going full bore. And if you don't have the protection, you can't make throws down the field. More importantly, Aidan, as I've said, and we talked about it, Q, and amongst our shows and everything else, he stares down his receivers. It's a big no-no. Right. You can't do that. He's got to get better. But also, the reason why I say that is because he has to have that experience. You got to put him out there in a situation, and we can take advantage of preseason, much like we did against the Seahawks. You can take advantage of getting him out there, seeing different teams, different defenses, different schemes, and getting him that experience so he can gel as a quarterback and grow as a quarterback. but there is not a quarterback controversy. What do you think?
No, there's not at all. Not at all. Cam Miller is going to be Cam Miller. I think that he has a lot to like. What I like about him is he's got 67 career college starts. I think that that's a big deal. And those are meaningful games as well. I mean, North Dakota State was playing for something, right? I mean, they're up there, they're winning championships. They weren't just playing their schedule out. So I think that he has that going for him. He's a coach's son. So, he and the FCS guys, they take the coaching really well. You know why? Because they have to, right? They have no option. They have to take the coaching really well. So he's got that going for him. But there's no quarterback controversy. Aidan O'Connell is the backup quarterback, until they say that he's not. And I think that he'll definitely be the backup quarterback this year, and then we'll see what happens following the year. I think the thing that stood out to me the most about the quarterback play on Thursday is there was a lot of people that were, and I don't know where this was coming from. It wasn't coming from me or anyone else who was at practice, but Aidan O'Connell is outperforming Geno Smith. No, he's not. No, he's not. I've been saying that to anyone who will listen. I don't know where that's coming from. Someone generated that in their basement. I don't know what that is, but he's not outperforming Geno Smith. So there's no controversy with Aidan O'Connell and Geno. There's no controversy with Aidan O'Connell and Cam Miller. It's just what they have. It's the three guys that they have right now. They felt very comfortable going into camp with the three. That's why they moved on from Carter Bradley. They didn't add a camp arm, so clearly they're going to let Cam get a lot of work in, and Aidan O'Connell's going to get some work too. He's got things he needs to improve on. I think the Raiders coaching staff was very smart, though, to let him finish that game on Thursday on a high note, as opposed to like going into halftime, not playing very well. So at least they let him come back out, especially that first drive. That first offensive drive in the third quarter, Aidan O'Connell generated, looked really good. I'm sure that they were scripted plays, but when he's able to plant his feet and deliver the ball, he does a really good job. But more times than not, as Lincoln said, he stares down the wide receiver, and if he doesn't have time, he's cooked. So, there's just things for him to work on, but he knows that, and the Raiders as an organization know that as well.
And one added caveat, that's where Chip Kelly comes into frame, being a positive offensive coordinator who's done it, experience, I should say, offensive coordinator who's done it. He realized there are plays that are in his playbook that are specifically geared for Aidan O'Connell's success. And it might be slightly different than Geno Smith or any other quarterback, but it's specifically, and that's what we saw to start that second half. So I agree with Q's point. That's what you allow a guy to go out there and play with confidence. You're not putting him in a compromised position where it's like, okay, I want you to do this. Well, I've never done that before, coach. I don't know how I'm going to do. And of course, there are times where you try that. But in the second half, if you want to build confidence comes as the success of reward to this player, then you go out there and you coach him that way to allow him to have that success that he needs.
Yeah, I think him staring down his receivers, I think that's obviously a big no-no. And I think when you're watching it from your couch, that can be a little bit frustrating. But also, I think the slow starts for Aidan O'Connell, right? I think he has to get off to a better start, especially in this next game. Because if Cam Miller once again outperforms him in a preseason game, then I think there's a conversation to be had, because there's also talk whether or not Aidan O'Connell he still has a high ceiling, because right now Cam Miller looks like he has a higher ceiling in just what we've seen, right? But there's a small sample size that we've seen from Cam Miller, Q.
Well, look, Cam Miller is a guy, if you remember, I mean, a lot of people don't know and don't watch a lot of North Dakota State, but a lot of folks watched Colorado last year. If you remember, Cam Miller went toe-to-toe with Shedeur last year. If you remember, he had actually probably the better game than Shedeur had last year. Cam Miller could play. I mean, that's the thing about it. Again, he's not the biggest, fastest, strongest. If he was, he wouldn't have gone to North Dakota State. I mean, again, no slight to the FCS, but there's a reason why they're in the FCS. Does not mean they can't play. The Raiders have three guys from the FCS level on their roster right now, right? And Dallin Lobby and touchdown Tommy Millott, and then Cam Miller as well. So obviously they don't have any problem dipping their toes into the FCS and going and getting player. I think that Cam is going to be allowed the opportunity to develop, and then you see what you have. I feel like we kind of know who Aidan O'Connell is, and I think that there's a place for him in the NFL, and it's a backup, and that's not a bad thing. That's a really good job in the National Football League. I think that that's who he is. I don't see enough consistent quarterback play to think that Aidan O'Connell is going to be your starter. But again, I mean, he's got to go out there and put his best foot forward, and I think he'll try to do that.
It's hard to develop backups in this league because you just don't have the time to do it, and you don't have the opportunities to do it. Every quarterback that I played for would not share reps with his backup. The only time the backup got reps was on the scout team. And then they're not performing your offense. They're performing you're performing a scripted offense for your defense. So it's hard to grade, but preseason is essential in seeing these young guys get a chance to go out there and do it. Not to say that they're starter value or that they're going to be, they're going to be a capable backup, because you just never know until you put them in that situation. But I will say this. Mark Brunell, one of my teammates from college, played 17 years in the National Football League. Most of them was as a backup after his starting time in Jacksonville. And there's no harm in being a backup. And there have been various journeymen. As you turned on the TV and watched various games this past weekend, you saw, one guy switch from one team to another. Oh, he's with them. He's with the Titans now, or he's with he's with the Cardinals now. I didn't know he was there. Oh, look who's on the Chiefs. Gardner Minshew is on the Chiefs, back up the quarterback of the Chiefs. Well, why couldn't he do that with the Raiders uniform? Knee-jerk reactions. Just relax, people. Just relax. Let the coaches coach and let the players play.
Yeah, I think the backup quarterback position is probably one of the best positions, right? Because you're not probably getting a lot of playing time, but you're getting the bag. So that's what I like.
Long snapper.
Yeah,
long snapper is the best position. You don't have to go to practice. You're just a long snapper. You're there for one responsibility. Long snapper, get the ball back there. You have a job like Blair and some of the other Trey Junkins, 20 plus years. That's the job. Or kicker.
I think it's too much pressure, though. I think it's too much pressure, though, to be the long snapper. Like, there's pressure. Like, you can't mess up. You got one job, right?
Yeah, that's exactly one job. One job. You don't have to block anybody. You're uncovered. The rules allow you to be successful. Just put the ball back there.
The long snapper, nobody appreciates that guy until that long snapper goes down, and then all of a sudden you have a new guy come in and you realize, oh man, we need that other guy back.
Why is my starting linebacker snapping the ball? What is that?
Right.
Hey, there's technique to it. There's definitely technique
Absolutely,
to it.
without a doubt.
Sure.
Yeah, Raider Nation, we're going to be back on Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Pacific time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. If you're on the East Coast, Link and Q will both be at the facility from what I'm hearing. So you guys are going to be bringing all that heat on Thursday as we get prepared for the Raiders taking on the 49ers on Saturday. So remember to join us there on Thursday morning. Remember also, if you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. We'll see you on Thursday, Raider Nation. Thanks so much for rocking out with us, and we'll see you soon.